Guys, I'm going to be real with you. There's not a lot going on in the tech world right now. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this tweet from Revegnus, sourced from Hana Securities, going over a whole bunch of numbers from Samsung. And we're going to try to pull from these numbers some interesting insights. And I think we can get there. I think we can find some interesting stuff to talk about. There was my new Amazfit watch vibrating. Was that audible? That might be audible. Very loud vibration motor. Maybe I'll talk about that in a later video as well. Anyways, I think we're going to be successful in pulling out some interesting little tidbits from these numbers. So Samsung smartphone sales in October of 2023. They experienced an 8% decrease compared to the same month last year and a 2% decrease compared to the previous month. So what could be responsible for their numbers going down? Well, obviously the smartphone market in general has been sort of trending downward for the last couple of years, and there are many economic reasons why that has been the case. Samsung has been one of the companies that has been, let's be honest, hit fairly hard by these decreases. We look at this article from Ars Technica. They talked about how back in September, Q2 smartphone sales were down 22%, the worst in a decade. So I think it's important to not dwell on this too much and say, what is going on here? Because, in fact, them only being down 8% year over year, it could be worse, right? Unless you're Google, in which case you're actually doing fairly well. They were the only ones that actually grew their business in that same amount of time. Very strange. But again, it's down for everybody for the most part. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. And like Rebecca said, no new models coming out is probably not helping for that time. The FE version of the S23 just came out, and I don't know how big of an impact that's going to necessarily make. We're also going to skip over this mid-range stuff because there's just not a whole lot going on there. But this, I think, is very interesting, and there is some stuff to dig into there. So the 9-month sales of the S23 reached 25 million units, and we have a breakdown here. So the Ultra sold 11 million units over those first 9 months, 4.52 million for the Plus model, and the standard model sold 8.91. Interesting that the Plus model is sort of existing in almost like a no man's land, right? Where people are either going for the standard or they're going for the Ultra. Not a whole lot of people are buying that mid-tier version, but 25 million units for the S23 series is pretty darn good. In fact, it surpassed the S22's sales over the same time span by 23%, 20 million versus 25 million. Now, at first blush, this may be sort of like confusing or surprising. I mean, look at that and say, why would it be 23% higher considering sort of where smartphone sales are, considering that the 23 model really wasn't all that different from the 22 model? What could have possibly spurred along an increase of 23%? I think that for me, the most obvious answer is the fact that these devices for the first time shipped with Snapdragon processors all across the world. No one was getting the Exynos processor, so everybody got that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is absolutely superb. These things had the best battery life of any of these phones that they've released in maybe ever. The S23 Ultra continues to be an absolute battery champ. The screen, incredibly bright, incredibly vibrant, and again, just an all-around solid device. Every single market got that version, and it is entirely possible. I would love to see a breakdown country by country. Did we see a 23% increase in North America where we've always got the Snapdragon, or did we see a really big increase in Exynos regions who were jumping on board because they weren't going to be stuck with that Exynos that is pretty universally not loved? Now, what I'm saying is kind of made even stranger by the fact that we're hearing rumors that Samsung may go back to shipping the Exynos processor in some regions again with the S24. If this was the cause, if going Snapdragon everywhere resulted in a nearly quarter increase in sales, Man, it's hard to believe that they would then go back to the Exynos. That's just seems like a crazy thing to do, unless, of course, there is still, money to be made. They would have to make up for that sort of increase. And of course, there's, good reasons why they keep trying to push the Exynos. They want to have that kind of control. And of course, making your own processor is going to lower your margins, allow you to make more money down the line, R&D up front, and then down the line, you can profit more from that because, again, it's your processor, you're making it, your specifications, tighter control, sort of the Apple way of doing things. So they will basically be sacrificing some short-term gain for what they would hope would be some long-term, much larger gain. I think, though, that maybe the most interesting aspect of this post is this last bit. The 3-month sales of the Z5 series recorded 4.86 million units. So the Flip 5 sold 3 million, the Fold 5 1.79 million, a 4% increase over the Z4 series 4.68 million units, and you can see the breakdown of that there. So the Flips and the Fold, the Z series devices increasing by 4% year over year for that same time span. So when it comes to these super premium, super niche, expensive devices, Z Fold, Z Flip to a lesser degree, we need to kind of dig into these numbers a bit more. So 23% increase for the 23 model, only a 4% increase for the Flips and the Folds of the 5 variety. So what does that 4% mean? Well, we need some historical context for that. So we're going to jump to this article on Sam Mobile from September the 22nd of 2022 that stated, Samsung may not meet its Z Fold 4 and Flip 4 shipment target. So if we scroll down, it says that Samsung was trying to ship 15 million foldable smartphones by the end of the year. Now, this is total, right? So this is not just speaking about the Z Flip 4 and the Z Fold 4. It'd be crazy to ship that many folding phones from September to the end of the year. The Z Fold 4 came out August the 25th, same day for the Flip 4. So going from late August to the end of the year, they're not going to ship 15 million. So this is all their foldable devices. But of course, most of them should have been the Flip 4 and the Fold 4. Apparently, they were not going to hit this target. They go on to say, the current predicament is that Samsung will be able to ship only 8 million units of its latest foldable smartphones by the end of this year, compared to 7.1 million units shipped during this period last year. This is still an impressive increase of 13%. So if I'm reading this correctly, from August the 25th to the end of the year, it looked as though they were going to see an increase of 13%, shipping 8 million units. Now keep in mind here, we're talking about a different time frame, okay? We're not talking about from launch to the end of the year. We're talking only about October of 2023, where they saw reportedly a 4% increase. So obviously we don't have perfect one-to-one numbers here because different time frames. But I think that we can pretty reasonably extrapolate here that the growth of the Z series, this last batch, the 5 series, does appear to have slowed down potentially fairly considerably. And I think it's important now to think about why that would be the case. Why would the Fold 5 and Flip 5 slow down, again, potentially quite considerably in terms of sales growth? Okay, they are still growing, so it's not like it's terrible, terrible, terrible news, okay? But it has slowed in its growth, which is definitely something Samsung is probably not wanting to see. I think that there are two massive reasons why this will be happening. Number one is that, let's be honest, the Z Fold 5 just didn't change all that much. It has sort of stagnated, right? They didn't build the pin in. They didn't change the aspect ratio of the screens. Really, all they did is they made it fold flat and they added a new processor. The camera system stayed the same. The screens stayed the same. Basically, nothing changed. The hinge is a bit better, and there's a new processor inside. That's about it. Now, the Flip 5 did get that brand new giant cover display, which, I don't know, maybe that's just not as big of a hit as they were hoping it was going to be. I won't really speak too deeply on that aspect because I just don't know enough about how people reacted to that device. I've never been like a Flip user. But with the Fold, definitely stagnating to some degree. That's a big part of this, I think. Reason number two is competition, guys. We have other alternatives, and we would have had them either out or coming quite soon when this thing launched. The Pixel Fold now exists. The OnePlus Open now exists. And so for the first time, the Z Fold is not running uncontested. There are other devices around to choose from, and I think that is absolutely going to have some impact on what Samsung is doing with the Z Fold 5. Now, I don't think it's going to be like a super massive number, right? You know, Google doesn't release sales figures. We do know that they sold more Pixel devices than they've ever sold before around the time they launched the Pixel Fold, but they'd also launched Pixel 7 and Pixel 7 Pro, which we know did quite well. So we don't know of those record-breaking sales numbers, what percentage of that was Pixel Fold. Personally, just from my small amount of knowledge about this stuff, I would say that if Google managed to ship in 2023 total about 500,000 units, I think they will be pretty happy with that. I think that's probably about what they were targeting. So yes, we're talking about, 1.79 million in October, and I'm saying that the Pixel Fold, maybe it did about 500,000 units for the entire year. So again, we're not saying the Pixel Fold is absolutely like dominating the Z Fold, but I think if we do some quick math, and again, we realize that we're not going to be perfect on this, we can make some sense of this, okay? So the Z Fold 5, 1.79 million, 4% increase. So let's take that 4% increase away, right? So then we're sitting somewhere like, instead of 1,790,000, we're at like 1,718,000, right? And then if we take 500,000 Pixel Folds from the end of June to the end of the year, we say 100,000 units per month, and then we add those sales to the Z Fold, we will be talking about an increase of almost 10%. So again, if we take this number minus 4% and compare it to this number plus the hypothetical sales they lost to the Pixel Fold, rather than a 4% increase in the month of October, it would be nearly a 9% increase. And then you say, you've got that stagnation. Does that account for the other 4% or higher? Absolutely it does. So if you want my assessment of why the increase is 4% instead of 13 like last year, I think there you have it. I think it's because the Pixel Fold ate into some sales a little bit, and the stagnation took care of the rest. Of course, we're flubbing some numbers here. We're trying to kind of feel things out for the sake of conversation. I would love to know what you guys think about this stuff in the comments down below. What do you think about these sales numbers? The S23 model selling really quite well. Do you think the 24 will suffer if they go back to the Exynos? What do you think about my hypothetical explanation for the slowing down of the foldable sales growth for Samsung? Again, hit those comments and let me know what you guys think. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.